Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm going to give just a minute for people to connect to their audio, but thanks for joining us. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our ISPCAN monthly webinar. My name's Jane Estes, and I'm the ISPCAN Knowledge and Content Development Manager and moderator for today's session. Also joining us online are Holly Malcolm, our Membership and Marketing Manager, and Pragathi Tamala, our ISPCAN CEO. ISPCAN's international webinars are always free of charge and cover diverse topics which are presented by subject matter experts from around the globe. These 90-minute webinars are designed to help our members and partners gain access to knowledge and expertise to inform care, improve practice, and drive policy change. All this is critical to help improve the outcomes for children globally. And we're excited to introduce ISPCAN's new virtual training model, the Huddle, which will take place this year between April and May. If you're a practitioner working in child protection from any sector, then this special training is an incredible opportunity for you. ISPCAN will virtually bring together multidisciplinary experts from diverse regions who will all examine a case study involving a different form of child abuse every year. Using this online case study format, each discipline will evaluate the role that it played throughout the case, and they will come together to determine what could have been done differently to ensure a more collaborative, successful response. The topic for this spring's huddle is strengthening interdisciplinary strategies to address child sexual abuse. It will be based on insights from the film Rewind by survivor Sasha Neulinger. Multi-generational child sexual abuse in the context of culture, family, and systems of care will be explored. How the medical, mental health, and justice systems interact to protect and heal the child will be deeply examined. From the eyes of the child, we'll hear the case as it unfolds using Sasha's home movies as he recreates and tells his story. On your screen now, you'll see the list of multidisciplinary content experts who developed the curriculum and will lead this virtual case study. Please visit our website for the full huddle concept note, the curriculum, and the application to attend. Attending the virtual huddle will be free for ISPCAN members. And also, we hope you'll consider joining us in Vilnius, Lithuania, for our October 6th through 9th Congress. We'll be bringing together the brightest minds in child protection from every sector to innovate and share their best practices. Join us in this beautiful country as we keep pushing the boundaries of research and practice to ensure that all children have the chance to thrive, no matter their experience. On your screen now, you'll see the Congress themes, and please note that abstracts are now open, so visit the ISPCAN website to submit your abstract. And because we believe that you should have access to all the information and resources available to support you in your work, we encourage you to visit our ISPCAN Knowledge Hub. The Knowledge Hub is an open access, centralized library containing ISPCAN and impactful partner resources. This user-friendly hub features ISPCAN past webinars, journal clubs, masterclasses, data-driven global reports, and shared partner and downloadable resources. If you have an open access program, tool, or resource that you would like shared in the ISPCAN Knowledge Hub, please send it to me at partnerships@ispcan.org. And we are so thrilled that you're here with us today, and we want to share some tips for making the most of today's session. Just please engage with us. This is really meant to be an active, interactive learning platform. Please participate by sharing your comments in the chat and your questions in the Q&A box throughout the webinar. We're going to use your questions from Q&A to begin the Q&A session immediately at the conclusion of the presentation. To enhance your experience, you can enable closed captioning from your Zoom control bar by choosing Captions. And now please take a moment, introduce yourself to other attendees, our ISPCAN team, and our featured presenter in the chat box. Let us know where you're joining from and your organization and your discipline. And as always, for joining us today, a recording of the session, the panel discussion, the presentation slides, and links to all featured resources will be sent to you after the webinar. And now our topic for today. In partnership with Thorn, understanding and preventing the threat of sextortion. The internet has created new risks for young people, and one of the fastest growing and most devastating threats is sextortion, a form of online exploitation where someone uses sexual images to blackmail and threaten others. The progression of sextortion threats is extremely rapid, often starting within hours of the first contact, and designed to pressure children to pay before they have time to either process the threats or seek support. The emotional and psychological toll on these young victims can lead to severe consequences, including withdrawal from social activities, depression, and even self-harm. What should a young person experiencing sextortion do, and how and where can they get help? With those questions in mind, our key learning objectives for today's session: to understand the definition of sextortion, what it is, and why it is critical to address this issue. To reflect on the current research by Thorn and NCMEC of the prevalence and impact of sextortion on young people and their families. And then to share prevention resources and learn how to identify the red flags and provide clear, actionable steps to respond to sextortion threats. And now I'm honored to introduce you to our presenter, Kelby Schnabel. Kelby is a senior manager of child safety advisory at Thorn, a tech nonprofit dedicated to developing technology to defend children from sexual abuse. She leads Thorn's industry consulting efforts to help companies navigate the complex and critical task of safeguarding children online. Previously at Thorn, she managed Thorn's prevention programs and behavioral change initiatives focused on preventing internet-enabled abuse by building tools to educate and empower children and families to navigate their digital world safely. Kelby joined Thorn in 2017. Prior to that, she spent time at the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking in Los Angeles, California, and previously served the Office of Indiana Attorney General, where she led several anti-trafficking initiatives across the state. So as I turn the session over to Kelby now, we wanted you to participate in a brief Zoom poll. You should see the polling questions on your screen, and we'd love for you to participate. Thank you. The answers are coming in quickly. Thank you so much. Okay, I am going to end the poll and share the results. So Kelby, I hope you can see these as well. It looks like, again, many have heard of sextortion, 86%. Do you feel equipped to respond to the issue? We're so glad you're joining us today because I think, again, as this emerging issue, many of us are looking for guidance on how to quickly respond. So 70% do not feel equipped to respond. And as in regards to it being an emerging issue in this global region that's represented here today, 86% say yes. So Kelby, thank you so much. I'm going to turn the session over to you now.
Great. Thank you so much. And just double checking that you can hear me all right. And I'm just looking at the chat. Thank you everyone for sharing where you're coming from and the work you all are doing. That's really incredible work. And I just really thank you all for being here today and for having me and for being willing to learn and listen to such a heavy topic. And thank you for that wonderful introduction, Jane. Like Jane mentioned, I'm Kelby. I've been at Thorn for 7 years now, and I am really eager to talk to you today. So first, I'm going to go ahead and get started with just a quick wellness disclaimer. It seems like a lot of you already know a little bit about this issue. You know this is a heavy topic, but I just want to go ahead and remind you that this topic is not easy. So thank you for being here today. We will discuss child sexual abuse, self-harm, suicide, and other online abuse. So please do what you need to do to take care of yourself during and after this presentation. This is being recorded, so if you feel like you need to step away and come back, please feel free to do so. So I'm going to talk to you about online harms and the new emerging threat, sextortion, and how to recognize the signs and respond and prevent this issue to support the young people in your lives. So Thorn is an innovative technology nonprofit that develops product and programs aimed at combating child sexual abuse at an unprecedented scale. We empower platforms and people who can protect children with the tools and resources to do so, using the power of technology to secure every kid's right to childhood joy. Child sexual abuse has changed dramatically with the rise of social media, yet our societal response has not. Beyond sextortion and grooming, we know that more than 100 million images and videos of child sexual abuse material were reported to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children last year. And according to a recent We Protect study, 70% of American children surveyed had experienced a harmful sexual interaction online before they had turned 18. So let that sink in for a moment. 7 in every 10 children have had something happen like this to them. So our head of research says it really well. Not too long ago, it used to be that if children did not live with or near an abuser, they would not be abused. Geography was a protective barrier, and the internet has destroyed that. Now, every child with an internet connection is a potential victim of abuse. A child can appear safe at home while being abused online. And as a society, we are just beginning to grapple with how to address this emerging public health crisis. What has worked in the past will not work now. Defending children now requires a multi-stakeholder approach and response with scaled technology solutions as one of the core components. And that is what we are building at Thorn. We are working to change the way the world responds to child sexual abuse in the digital age. Our strategy is to empower those on the front lines of protecting children with the technology and resources that they need to do their jobs efficiently. We conduct original research that allows us in the whole child safety ecosystem to understand what children experience so we can create tools and programs to make tangible change. We build and deploy state-of-the-art software solutions for tech platforms to detect child sexual abuse material and scale and create safer online environments. And we also build solutions for law enforcement and nonprofits to help them solve cases faster and remove children from harm. And we develop prevention programming for youth and caregivers. And we work with legislators globally to help them develop and implement policies to protect children. So today I'm going to talk to you about sextortion, and I'm going to start with a story. I want to tell you about Jaden. He's 13 years old, and he's on his school soccer team. And he loves playing video games and hanging out with his friends. A few weeks ago, Jaden made a new friend on Instagram, Amber, who seems to be a bit older than him. He only knows her online. The two became fast friends, messaging often. Jaden looks forward to meeting Amber online each day and is beginning to develop a crush. Amber begins to send Jaden a few suggestive images and asks him to send some back to her. "Send me something I haven't seen of you yet," she says, and shares her own nude photo with him. Eventually, he concedes and nervously sends his own nude selfie back to her. The conversation instantly takes a turn for the worse. Amber demands he sends her money on Cash App, or she will share the image with everyone he knows. Because now, since they are friends on Instagram, Amber has access to his friends list, knows where he goes to school, and can see who his parents, friends, and family are. To Jaden, she knows his whole life. The threats are specific and terrifying, and they're happening fast. He is trapped. He pays $20 a day for a while, but the demands continue and they increase. Now they're demanding hundreds of dollars. At home, Jaden becomes withdrawn and depressed. He quits his soccer team. His coach keeps trying to get in touch, and his parents keep asking him what's wrong. He pushes away his family and friends and withdraws further each day. One day, Jaden's mom discovers a series of cuts on his arm and realizes he's been harming himself. His nude image is then sent to everyone he knows. Jaden feels like his life is over. Jaden is fictional, but his story and experience is not unique. Sextortion is one of the fastest growing crimes against children today, and it is happening to kids around the world as we speak. And what's most difficult to digest, far too many of these instances end with young victims experiencing extreme fear and isolation, self-harm and long-term trauma, and even suicide. Sextortion is defined as threats to expose sexual imagery depicting someone if they don't yield to demands. These threats can come from strangers online, like what happened to Jaden, or it can come from people in offline communities, such as once intimate romantic partners who seek to control victims. This type of online abuse is extremely traumatic and isolating. Kids experiencing this abuse often do not see themselves as victims, and they instead believe it is their fault that this is happening to them. They can feel shame, fear, hopelessness, and isolation. Anyone can be a victim of sextortion, boys and girls, children, and even adults. It is important to note that sextortion is not always financial. There are other forms of sextortion that look like seeking demands for more explicit images or videos, or forcing them to do something else. So today we are going to spend most of our time focusing on the recent rise of financial sextortion, but it is important for us to keep this in mind. So what do we know about financial sextortion? Thorne and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC, released a research report earlier this year on the increase of financial sextortion. So we looked at cyber tip line reports about sextortion looking back 3 years, and we found that financial sextortion is primarily targeting teenage boys aged 14 to 17. And it's important here to note that there are some limitations with the research. So not all victims report and not all reports get to NCMEC. So our research is likely underreported, but this is what we do know. Thorne and NCMEC's research found that the main finding is that this is a really big issue. We estimate that NCMEC receives more than 800 reports of sextortion each week. Over 2/3 involve financial demands. And the spike started in 2022, but this has been ongoing. Bad actors are increasingly tech savvy and will employ deceitful tactics to make threats. This includes catfishing, which is when someone creates a fake online identity to trick others into believing that they are real, threats of account hacking, and the creation of deepfakes. So with new generative AI technologies, bad actors are able to create fake imagery that appears realistic and is threatening enough to harm a child. This means that a young person or a child could receive an image of themselves that they didn't even take. But it looks like they did, and it's enough to scare them and feel like their reputation would be so damaged if it were shared. So the threats are still very real and traumatic. And for young people experiencing sextortion, this can result in significant mental health impact, including intense shame and guilt, anxiety, depression, PTSD, isolation, bullying, and suicidal ideation or attempts. And we have heard a confirmation of at least over 30 cases that have resulted in suicide. So this is an ongoing issue that needs to be taken very seriously. So here's a quote from a research study out of the Canadian Centre for Child Protection that shows how quickly this crime is rapidly unfolding online. We've also heard from youth in crisis who have been given deadlines from the person threatening them. For example, threats to release images by a certain date if they don't receive payment. And we also know that for those who have paid, they often continue to receive threats. And for young people, this can feel like their world is ending. So this quote says, "Early today, I had accepted this person on my Instagram page. After talking a few minutes, we moved on to Snapchat. Then this scammer sent some nude images and I stupidly sent some back. After that, they had screenshots of my whole following list from Instagram. Most of them were my family members, and they threatened that they will expose me if I didn't send money." In any case of sextortion, financial or not, shame is the biggest obstacle to help seeking. We learned from our research that shame is what's keeping kids from reaching out for help when they need it. Roughly 85% of sextortion victims cited shame and embarrassment as the reason for not getting help. And sadly, kids aren't wrong to be concerned about this. Our research in 2019 showed that more than half of parents mostly or exclusively blame the child in the photo when nudes are leaked. Abusers rely on this shame. Harmful online sexual situations can cause an intense amount of humiliation and shame for children when they were coerced, threatened, or their intimate photos or videos are reshared without consent. It's so important for youth to know that when they find themselves in these situations, not only is it not their fault, it is often because their groomers or perpetrators intentionally built a sense of trust in their relationship that made them feel safe. Unfortunately, though, most often, the youth blame themselves, and this shame blocks them from healing and getting support navigating these hurtful experiences. And the response of youth support systems, parents, educators, and tech companies can play a pivotal role in diffusing the shame and healing the situation. In an effort to protect our kids and warn them of the risks of sharing nudes or online dangers, we say things like, "Don't send nudes because if it gets out, it will be your fault," or "You can't take it back once you send it," or "You shouldn't have sent it in the first place." Unintentionally placing the responsibility of the abusive and harmful actions of others on their shoulders. Bullies and online perpetrators count on kids being ashamed and embarrassed. We must approach kids with a tone of understanding and less judgment so we can remove the stigma and shame. Now, this is a lot, but there are things we can do to help. So the issue of child sexual abuse in the digital age is an issue of scale. As tens of billions of images, videos, and messages pass through tech platforms every single day. So how do we find these instances of abuse like Jaden experienced, or the files of child sexual abuse being traded on a platform? The goal is to find them quickly and stop their spread or to prevent harm in the first place. This is like trying to find a very small needle in a very big haystack. Our job at Thorn is to help our partners find those needles. And so we built a very specialized magnet that is very good at finding those small needles, which is our product, Safer. When we launched Safer in 2019, it allowed companies to simply find images and videos of known child sexual abuse material that had already been seen by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And this is done by simply matching the hashes and the digital fingerprints of images. And hash matching is critical, but the harder job, and one just as critical, is finding new abuse content and live abuse situations. So we began using machine learning, AI, to build image, video, and text classifiers to help find never before seen content. Often, this content of children who are actively being abused right now are active conversations that are leading to abuse. And recently, we released our text-based harm detection to find and address threats like those made to Jaden in the story I had told you earlier. When combined with the actions of those in the larger child safety ecosystem, this technology could stop abuse in its tracks before any images are shared. And today, our solutions have detected more than 7 million files of suspected child sexual abuse material on our partners' platforms. The only way to help these kids is to keep innovating. Now, I'm going to say something that may surprise you. I think that the internet can be an incredibly positive place for children, a place to discover, to connect, to explore. It's a core part of our children's lives today, which is one of the reasons why I do this work. I believe as a society, we need to address these harms in a scaled and holistic way so that our children can realize the full benefit of technology without the potential for abuse. We can start with tech, but the most effective response will be so much more. It will be a digital safety net paired with a community safety net. So what does that look like in action? Every company with an upload button must proactively design safe spaces for children and detect child sexual abuse at scale. Parents should have access to resources that help them engage in frequent, shame-free conversations with their children about staying safe online. Consumer brands can leverage their platforms for collective marketing to raise awareness and change the conversation around this issue that affects nearly every child in some way. And policymakers can create and implement legislation that balances the need for both privacy and the safety of our children online. And philanthropists should recognize that tackling this threat is crucial for achieving positive long-term outcomes for children across the areas of online safety, health, and education. We can change the course of this emerging public health crisis together. So now I want to talk about what we can do to help create a better outcome for kids. So here are key steps and actions to take if someone you know is experiencing sextortion. And we will also make sure that you have access to the resource links after this webinar to easily revisit these resources. So number one, do not pay. If you've already paid, it's okay, but stop paying. We've heard from some kids that, the messaging do not pay can be kind of scary because what if they've already paid? Oftentimes they pay out of fear. So we really want to try to reduce that shame and fear by reassuring that, if you've already sent money, it will still be okay. But it's really important to stop paying because cooperating or paying rarely stops the threats. Talking to someone, anyone, safe adults, anyone who is safe and someone you trust. So a safe adult, a coach, a teacher, a parent, a friend. You can also reach out to the crisis text line. I know that this is primarily in the US, but if you go to use WhatsApp, they can talk to you internationally as well. And save everything. Block the blackmailer, but do not delete the profiler messages because that can be used in a report. And then report it on the platform, which is the app that it happened on. And there is a guide that can help with this from NCMEC. It's really important to report this to the platforms because the platforms are working really hard to try to respond to this issue. But as that one quote mentioned, it started on Instagram and then it moved to Snapchat. Like it's constantly, or it moves to text message. Like the way that these bad actors are becoming friends first before threatening, that gives them access to so many ways of contacting the child repeatedly. but it's really important to report it on the platform because one profile of a bad actor could be targeting hundreds of children. Like this is almost should be viewed as an organized crime where it's happening in a way so rapidly and so many people are getting targeted that it's very strategic from the offender side. So reporting it is very important. And then reporting it to NCMEC as well, because they're partnering with tech companies. They're also partnering with law enforcement directly and international law enforcement as well. So reporting it to NCMEC is critical in responding to this issue. And they also have very wonderful help resources for victims and their families, and they can provide just so much support and guidance along the way. And reporting any images exchanged to NCMEC's new resource called Take It Down. So this allows victims to upload their images to create a hash, a digital fingerprint, like I mentioned before, which will help them get it removed faster from the internet. And then also it's really important to change all passwords, especially if the offender has had access or you're concerned about that. But the most important thing for victims to know here is that this is not life ending. It will be okay, and there is hope to get to the other side. If there's one thing you can remember from this slide is that I want you to know that it's okay. And if there's one thing you can take away here, it's really to provide that light and hope to a child who's in crisis. They are so terrified. They feel like their life is over, and really encouraging them that there is hope to get to the other side. So as a society, we must remove and end our culture of victim blaming and shaming. And that includes inadvertently shaming and blaming with language and key messaging. So here are some ways you can be a supportive adult. So removing phrases like, I told you so, what were you thinking? Why did you do this? This is what happens when, why didn't you? And instead saying things like, this isn't your fault. This is a crime. This might be scary. How are you feeling? Thank you for trusting me with this. I'm glad you came to me. And the key message is we can get through this together. And remember that sextortion can happen to anyone, even adults. And the blackmailer is to blame, not the victim. So that key messaging, you're not alone. It's not your fault. There's hope to get to the other side. It's going to be okay. Parents and trusted adults are an essential link in the chain of prevention. Changing how we talk to kids about these issues can start to shift the cultures of blame that keep victims of online harm silent. The way that these situations are handled can either diffuse or worsen the shame and victim blaming. Kids today need full knowledge of the risks that they face online, communities that support them in making the best decisions they can, and means to regain control when things go sideways. These steps are so simple and are critical interventions to safeguard children, yet many parents find it hard to do. Parents and trusted adults can engage, are an essential link in the chain of prevention. Engaging parents and caregivers on this issue can be very challenging, but it is critical to safeguard these young people today. So research shows that parents play this critical role. And one study from the Cyberbullying Research Center found that calm, healthy, and non-judgmental dialogue with a child about what the pros and cons of social media, gaming, and other online activities sets a tone that invites continued open communication about anything negative that might occur, and consequently can keep them from going underground and hiding their experiences out of fear and shame. So what can parents do? Creating an open and judgment-free environment about digital safety. Talking to your children regularly. This is not a one-time conversation. It should be ongoing and continue as their child grows. Helping kids understand and use privacy controls. Set profiles to private and don't accept messages from people you don't know. And avoid oversharing personal details and photos of children in your lives in public settings online. We have many resources at Thorn, and one of those resources is Thorn for Parents, which is it's a digital safety resource hub for parents and trusted adults to learn more about the issue, read discussion guides with conversation starters, and have, topic deep dives on the issue. So this QR code here actually goes to the Thorn for Parents website. It goes directly to a sextortion discussion guide, but there are many different issue topics on there around like screen time. We're calling it Stranger Danger 2.0, where it's like talking to your kids about people they're meeting online, and sexting and sending nudes, how that's happening around schools and communities, sextortion, and online grooming, and many other topics as well. So that's a really valuable resource. It's free, it's online, and within the resource hub as well, under each issue topic, there are links out to additional resources that may be helpful for you. So here are the 4 key takeaways for parents. Start early. The early years are critical. When kids are more open and willing to share, begin talking about digital safety before giving device access, and continue this as they grow. Like I said, it's not a one-time conversation, it is ongoing. Listening often with empathy and understanding and building trust while helping them make informed decisions. Avoid shame. Parents can help shift our victim-blaming culture by affirming that their children are never at fault if someone abuses, betrays, or tricks them. And give hope. Kids may feel like there is no hope and that their life is ruined. It is important for them to know that there is support to move forward. So now I'd like to end by imagining a very different world for Jaden. One where his caregivers had age-appropriate conversations with him about the benefits of technology and red flags in online environments from the time he was first handed an iPad. His pediatrician, his doctor, checked in with him about online experiences at each well visit, providing a safe and confidential place to ask for help when he needed it. His favorite sports team held a youth empowerment days to merge sport with online safety in a non-threatening, fun environment. Where his favorite platforms, apps, and games had deployed detection so that a potentially harmful encounter had been stopped in its tracks. In that world, Jaden may have recognized the red flag when the abuser asked for a nude image and stopped the interaction. Or he may have asked his mom, teacher, or a friend for help. Because the conversation had been normalized, he had the language. He knew it wasn't his fault, and he wouldn't be scared of getting in trouble. Or the platform may have flagged Amber's abuse and intervened before it escalated. And in that world, where he is well-educated, supported by his offline network, and protected by an AI-powered online safety net, Jaden's online experience would be much better. It would be on his terms. He would be empowered to explore, play, learn, and connect safely, even online. That's something that every kid deserves. So join us in this critical mission to defend children from sexual abuse and build a world where every child can be safe, curious, and happy. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And I see the chat has been going off. I would like to take a minute to read that, and we can open up for questions.
Shelby, thank you so much. That story of Jaden, both to begin and end with two very different outcomes, very hard hitting, and I think really shows that this isn't a hopeless situation for parents, for victims, for civil society. It's not hopeless, and there's a way, to see through this. So thank you for that incredible positivity of ending with a different story for Jaden, a different outcome. So we have lots of questions coming in lots of different places. So I'm going to try to make sure that I cover everything. Um, can you tell us a little bit? There were a lot of, first of all, just to answer some questions in the chat in regards to Kelby's PowerPoint that will be sent to you after as well. So you have total access to that. The link to the recording of this session will also be on a website page that has the NCMEC Take It Down program, links to the Thorn Sextortion discussion guide, the NetSmart Sextortion resource by NCMEC, the Thorn Sextortion blog, and then also some of the research that was shared by Kelby. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that that will be sent to them and available. There are questions about Thorn. Obviously it's a US-based organization, and I can't say any more positive about the fact that everything on their site is open access. They're doing such amazing, great work. And the Thorn for Parenting and the No Filter programs, I encourage everyone in the audience, whether you're a parent or practitioner, civil society, there are incredible resources there that can be translated and have great international reach in regards to the issue being an international issue. So please know that those resources are there on Thorn. But there were some questions in regard to the actual reach of Thorn, like some of the takedown links and NCMEC. Are those available internationally? Does Thorn do work internationally? Are there regions where, you've been focusing? So that question came up quite a bit.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And thanks everyone I'm just looking at the chat. I just appreciate how engaged everyone is on this topic. So yeah, Thorn, our products and tools are available internationally. So we work with our tools are available. Our confidential tools for law enforcement are available internationally. So there is that reach. We also have, our product safer that I mentioned. It's for any platform with an upload button, and that has a global reach. So we have companies listed on our website who we work with. And our research also, so primarily our youth research, it started focused on the US. We actually just released a report for Germany and other parts of Europe, France as well. And we're starting to expand that. So that is, our research is expanding and from a global perspective. And then also our resources, like they are publicly available internationally. They are in English. So that is one of the limitations, is that you need some Google Translate or something for some of those resources. But we do have international reach. We work globally, and we also work in different areas as well. So I hope that answers some of the question there. And then I'm happy to share more if there were more specific questions about Thorn.
There was one about the reporting line. So is that an international reporting line?
Yeah, so NCMEC, we have heard that they, especially for sextortion, they will accept international reports, and they will work to triage that to international law enforcement. So NCMEC is the primary reporting for child sexual abuse in the United States, but also they will, because they've been working so heavily on this issue of sextortion, and because sextortion is such an organized crime, it could be the same person targeting hundreds of kids across the world. And so for them to be able to triage that and to coordinate with international law enforcement and ICACs and local law enforcement as well, they are able to do all of that. So that is why we recommend reporting to NCMEC. And they can help with that.
I remember when you and I were first speaking, that this does cross regional.
Yeah.
in regards to, I know that there was a group that was extorting from North America who were located, as a collective unit. I believe, I forgot what region they were in. I thought Asia or Africa. And so interesting that, these are not, there's no regional boundaries in, victims and extorter.
Right.
It really is a huge international issue.
Especially because the internet has access globally. If kids are easily targeted, like they can be targeted globally.
And the 800 cases that NCMEC was reporting weekly, were
Mhm.
those US or those international?
I actually don't know. I know that there were 800 cases reported weekly, focusing like specific about threats with sextortion. I don't know the actual breakdown of that. I could get that. I'm sure it's in the report, and I can go back to that. But yeah, and the report will be linked. So I'm sorry, I don't have that exact.
Oh, no worries.
Mm.
And then in regards to, this is a big business. This is a revenue generating business. Is there any indication of, how much money is paid to these extorters? Is there any, I was just curious.
I think we're still trying to learn the impact, because it's just, a new emerging threat. We're not quite sure. I mean, I've heard stories of kids, and I've heard stories of a lot of wealthy families being targeted because they appear to have money, and I've heard stories of parents being so scared that they've given thousands of dollars. So I I mean, I've even heard a case where they gave like, I think it was like 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 a lot of money. Like, and like I want to say, I don't want to say the wrong number, but it was a shocking amount of money to have given for someone who's so scared. So I actually don't, I think we're still learning that, and we're gonna keep learning that, in the years to come.
Thank you for that. And the removal guide, can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that? So it is possible, looking to the hope for all of this, to remove the images. Okay.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we believe that would be an international option, or there may be international
Yes.
solutions as well.
Yeah, definitely. So the removal guide, so the platform that the abuse occurred on, it's really important to report there, and they can help remove so like where the image got sent, reporting to that platform saying like this is abuse, this is sextortion, like take this image down. But then also, so that's like app by app or like platform by platform. And then going, NCMEC has a new take it down removal program as well, where you can upload. So if the image, if they still have the image, they could upload it. And then it would be like a hash fingerprint. So it's like a digital fingerprint is what they do with that. And so then that can, go into other technology like Safer, for example, where they're looking at hashes of known material, and that would be one of the ones that would get pulled down from that magnet, if that makes sense.
Yes. Okay.
So there is hope in getting it removed. It is it can be a brutally long process. It can be painful, especially if the images have already been seen by your community. There's bullying, there's all these things, but the biggest thing is, to have to support kids if this is happening to them, like you will get through this. Like this will be painful. Can't remove that, but you will survive this, you will get through this, and there's hope to get to the other side of that.
Thank you. So in the reporting options that you talked about, the removal line,
Mhm.
reporting to NCMEC, you didn't talk about law enforcement. So
Right.
is it suggested that you would also contact law enforcement? Does NCMEC or similar organizations do that on your behalf? Like, when do you engage them?
Yeah, so that is one of the so we kind of take this really streamlined approach where it's just like if you go to NCMEC will coordinate and help start a case and like coordinate and triage with law enforcement, because there could be someone who's already out there from that same platform targeting. So that is why we recommend that. Also, you can go to law enforcement, of course. You can go to the FBI as a whole. They are, trained to respond to sextortion. The Internet Crimes Against Children, the ICACs are also trained to respond to sextortion. We just recommend going, funneling through NCMEC because they are partnered with the FBI and ICAC. So it's kind of just a more streamlined approach that way, and they can assign it that way. But and also it just really varies on, jurisdiction, globally, culturally. There's so many concerns, especially because this issue involves, sexual abuse imagery. It can be, very sensitive. So that is kind of why we say to just take these steps, because we don't want to inadvertently create harm in the reporting process. So it really just depends on the type of support and training that the law enforcement has. So that's why we just kind of say to go to NCMEC or FBI or ICAC, because they can then triage it. But yeah, we just don't want there to be, more harm created if it's in a place that doesn't have the structure needed.
That makes sense. And along that line, somebody asked about kind of the prosecution rates. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm assuming
Yeah,
they're probably fairly low.
they are, but I did read, there are several success stories where they're starting to pinpoint who is doing this and bringing them to justice. I know even because it's kind of an organized crime. I mean, I don't know the exact report or article, but I remember they had found someone who was almost like just a money mule here in the U.S. working for someone in, in Africa who was organizing this. And so they ended up getting charged because it was one of the cases where a child had died by suicide. They ended up getting charged for it. So they are working on this. It's just, again, it's slow and trying to figure out who is doing this. So many people are doing this. It's not just one person, but it's multiple different, and it's just, it's spreading like wildfire, honestly. So it's one of those things we're just trying to contain it by empowering children and their families to respond to it.
Well, and I love the fact that you said there is progress being made with tech companies. And we do have a question about that. How can tech companies and social media platforms prevent this? But I love that you're not waiting for that to happen. I mean, right now we have countless victims who can't wait for that to happen. And guess what?
Right.
It's already happened to them. So whatever a tech company does 5 years from now is irrelevant to them. But
Mhm.
because I know that Thorn works very closely with tech companies. So what is happening out there? What kind of safeguards?
Yeah, so tech companies are working very hard. A lot of tech companies have their own trust and safety teams, which are responsible for child safety, for protecting users on their platforms. And those people who work on those teams, they care so deeply about protecting kids, about this issue, and they are working around the clock to help respond to this. So some of the things that they're doing, um, implementing new controls. So like maybe making profiles who are young people set to default private, default the parental setting. So it's like default private profile, default no one can message you if they're not your friend. Like also some companies are, starting to create more warnings and like resources for youth to educate them on their platform. So they can use, they can they can basically create some sort of like pop-ups that are like, hey, it looks like you're about to send a nude picture. Are you sure you want to do that? Like, here are some steps that you should consider. Or it's like there can be other pop-ups that are like, hey, be careful who you're talking to. Not everyone is who they appear to be. Or, that's on the like front line of like, again, that's putting a lot of burden on kids to figure that out. So there's also technology that they can be implementing, and they are starting to, of just trying to figure out, how this is happening, starting to talk to other tech companies. There's an organization called the Technology Coalition that that's a bunch of different tech companies working together to try to combat this issue together, and trying to problem solve how they can, tell each company when there's abuse happening. So it's like, hey, this person's bad on our platform. Watch out for this person. Block this person on your platform too. So it's like trying to create ways to do it, but also they have the very difficult job of balancing the privacy, the regulations, all of these other things they have to keep in mind. So it's, I wish it were a one size fits all solution, but there's so much nuance involved, and they are working very hard to fix this. But in the meantime, and regardless, we still have to show up as a society and, talk to our kids and, support them and teach them what to do. So that needs to happen as well.
So if I understood you correctly, interesting, the technology is already there to recognize that someone is about to send a nude.
Yeah, so that's called a classifier. And so yeah, it's like AI, machine learning technology. So and it's, explicit imagery, or it's also known as like sensitive imagery. Some companies have something in place. There's a few different things. I mean, you can look into that. But yeah, I mean, that's essentially what that is. But again, there's so many different nuances involved because you don't know the age of certain people on the platform. So there's a lot to consider with that. But yes, the technology does exist.
So there were questions regard to AI. I think that's always, and
Yeah.
so there's a positive side to AI. They can at least
Yeah.
recognize, maybe
Yeah.
have a pop-up or a warning.
And with
But
detection, yeah.
the negative side, obviously, is the whole deep fake issue and AI generated photos where a child's a victim who really had nothing to do with the imagery being created or sent. So how, what guidance would you give on that? That seems like a whole different,
Yeah.
way to approach it, or parenting, or what.
Yeah, this was kind of shocking to like because I've been working on this issue of sextortion now for like 4 or 5 years, and then with the rise of AI last year, just learning that that's possible, it's like, oh wow, this kind of flips the whole thing on its head a little bit. So, um, yeah, I mean, my advice, just like as a parent, is like to trust your kid and listen to them and like believe them. It's very simple. But like they could say, no, 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 I didn't take this, but this is happening. Like, and you're like, well, it looks real. Like, what you did? But it's like, don't respond with that immediate. You're gonna have a reaction, but like try to set that aside and just show up for your kid. And in the same, just respond the exact same way as all of these things. What they did is a crime. This is not your fault. We'll get through this. Like, I think the response truly is the same. It's just shocking that, this can happen. I think the fear, is definitely going to be heightened. And so, yeah, unfortunately, I think even though it's a fake image, it still can create just as much harm as a real image. And so treating it the same, reporting it the same, even when you report to NCMEC, I think there's a checkbox that's like, I think this might be AI generated or something, or you can note that, but like it's still abuse imagery. So it still needs to be reported. And it still can create harm, and it still can create all of those mental health issues that we talked about of the impact of victims. So it's truly the same response. And, again, going back to the way that you talk to the kids, like, I think your initial response is like, why did you send this? But like, you don't want to say that to someone who did actually send it. You don't want to say that to someone who created a deep fake. Like, I think it's just going to have to be the same empathetic, non-judgmental, we will get through this hopeful response.
Well, and so are there resources that can help? So let's say an image in Jaden's first scenario, the image is sent to all his contacts, his friends, his coaches, his family. So do you have resources available that then a family can use to send to those contacts that explain what happened? I mean, I assume once the image is out there, there's a desire to get a little of the control back for the families and the victims. And is there any scripting there? Is there recommendations of how you contact who's received the image to let them know?
That's a really great question and really important. We don't have like a script that I know of. I know that NCMEC has like victim services, like a very specific service for victims and their families. And I'm sure that they have resources there. I haven't looked that closely. And I'm sure that they could guide a family through that. But I think that's a really great point that we should have like a very specific, like, here's how you move forward type of script. Because yeah, I mean, telling people to move forward is one thing, but giving them the actual tool to do it is probably more helpful. So, um,
There's even part of that script to include, please do not reshare this image. Like
yes,
it's
and
part of
that's
a
another
crime.
piece of like that, yeah, the education that we try to provide too with our resources. And, even with young people, it's like that bystander approach. Like, you receive an image, don't reshare it. You receive an image, like, don't bully or blame the person in that. Like, there's so many different steps that you can take around like this whole issue really requires such a holistic response.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. There was a question. I know you at the beginning highlighted that many of these are financial sextortion, not all of them. Some are, revenge porn, some are like other end goals besides money to extort these images. And any change of focus there, are those handled any differently? Or
Yeah, so what's interesting with that is like so like back in 2017 we saw an increase in sextortion, and that's when we really started paying attention to this, and that's when I started, at Thorn. And really we saw that the motivation then was more like sexually motivated. So it's like what you picture, like a child sexual abuser, like grooming children online weeks and months at a time, building a relationship, like it's a much slower, much longer process, and then getting them to send the images, and then um, you know, and then sex sorting them to send more images. So the threat would be, I need you to send me more content. And so it would be like, and then these people, and oftentimes this would be targeting young girls, not always, but that's usually what we were like the more stereotypical like case of that. And these young people would feel, so completely trapped in this situation, because it would be like going on for months of just this person abusing them, and them feeling like there's just no way out of it, and feeling so much shame because not only have they sent images, they continue to send images because they're trapped in this. So they just feel like they can't, get support to get out of it. So there's just so much shame. That's still happening. That is still happening, but we're not seeing it on the scale of financial sextortion. And that scenario that I explained also has resorted in self-harm and suicide and things like that. But what we're seeing right now with financial sextortion is that's happening so fast that like law enforcement can't even like keep up, because it's like hours. So like, I think one of the stories that I've heard that's the most impactful is like someone asked, an investigator, someone asked a family who had been a victim of sextortion and their child died by suicide. And they're asking, well, what did you recognize the signs? Like, were there any signs? And they were like, no, there were no signs at all. It happened in the course of like 5 hours. Like, and so that is the urgency behind wanting to focus on financial sextortion, is that we're just seeing the threats come so quickly, and the severity. And I mean, I don't know this, but it seems like because they're targeting boys, like boys are more likely, less likely to, ask for help, because, that can feel, not always, but, I'm generalizing here. So please forgive me for that. But like, it's targeting them in a way that's happening so quickly, and they can't keep up. And so that's the switch that we've seen the difference on. And it's not sexually motivated, it's financially motivated, it's targeted, it's very strategic, versus the other one is like sexually motivated. It is a child predator, it is someone who is doing this for their own pleasure, and that person also needs to be taken to justice for a completely different thing. And that, and one of those abusers could also be targeting multiple people at once. Like, we had heard a story where they had like once one, it was there's a blog on our website about this, but it's like once one victim finally came forward, she learned that they ended up finding the abuser, and on his laptop they found like file folders of just different names of people. And it was like all of the people he had been targeting. And it was, it was like tens of hundreds, like, and so that's why it's so important to report, because, so many people could be being targeted by the same person.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm sure it's a multi-victim scenario in many cases. Um, So that target age of 14 to 17, and like you said, it can happen any age, any gender, any region. But you are seeing such a huge surge in that 14 to 18 young male. Um, like, do you think that psychologically, because the first step seems to be one, befriending, and two, sending a fake nude that appears to be from a female, that then, for whatever reason, is where the guardrails go down for that age group? I'm kind of curious, like, why that
Wait,
makes it
sorry,
so
can you
prevalent.
can you say that one more time?
Yeah, so you said that the biggest increase has been that 14 to 17-year-old young male. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the,
Mm-hmm.
even though it happens to anyone, but that's the age that you're finding the most prevalence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, why do you think that is? I guess it's a short way. Is it, that
I think it's just easy. They're young and excited to be talking to someone who's excited to talk to them online. I mean, and they receive an image, so it seems real and they believe it. Like young people, their brains aren't fully developed. They don't, like imagine, you know, growing up online, you're going through puberty, you're going through all these things, you're experiencing all these things. I think it's just, that's just, and I think that's the age in the report. I mean, I know we've heard of younger too. I know we've heard of older too. So it just really, um, that's just where it's falling. I mean, I think it's easy to you can put yourself in a young person's shoes and think like, oh, I'm, young, trying to grow confidence. I'm trying to figure out who I am. I'm going through puberty. I'm going through all these social things at school. And oh, someone really nice and beautiful wants to talk to me online and they think that I'm attractive. Like that's
right?
something that I think just, that's how they get targeted.
Well, because an image is sent to them first,
Mhm.
is there, well, then
Yeah.
they have risk in this relationship too, even
That's
though
what it
they don't
feels
because
like.
it's a fake image.
But it's, yeah, exactly.
Well, that
Mhm.
kind of begs the question, how young is too young to begin to warn and have these discussions? And, kids get phones at very young age.
Yeah. So that's a great question. And I believe that you should be having this conversations. I think there's so many building blocks. So the early years are really critical when you can have an open dialogue with your child, when your child is still comfortable talking to you, let them know that they can always come to you so you can, have age appropriate conversations and like foundational conversations at a really young age. Like my son is 3 years old and I like am just like, you can come to me for anything, like removing fear, removing shame, just like very age appropriately. Like, he's like afraid to talk about, something that happened at school. And, we're just like so open with him because it's just wanting to create that open dialogue. So you can do that in the very early years, but also, building that trust as they grow up and, making sure that your child knows that they can come to you no matter what, talking early and often. So for kids under the age of 13, like just as you would talk to them about wearing a helmet when they ride the bike, you would talk to them about risks that come with the internet and how they can protect themselves, um, just as you would talk, about strangers in public, stranger danger. That's like, I think parents are often afraid of their kids being like kidnapped and abducted. But that's not the biggest concern anymore. It's like you could have a stranger abusing, trying to groom them on their phone. So in their house, you could think that they're safe at home. So really learning, the how to protect themselves in that way. And then for kids older, it's much more challenging. And I like have all of the empathy for those parents in those positions right now where, but just as they get older, have those conversations, continue to talk to them, like have proactive efforts to teach them to recognize the flags, but also like let them teach you. Like, why do you like to talk? Like, why do you like TikTok? Why do you like Instagram? Like, um, let them teach you. And then also like that can open up a dialogue and help them safeguard them, because some parents, like, I mean, I'm like this too, I like don't love all of the social media that like their kids are on. And so really just coming at it very open and judgment free, not being like your generation is so bad for being addicted to your phones. Like that's not going to help have a conversation. So it's really being open and talking about the benefits of being online, but also talking about the risks and the dangers. So I think it's a balanced approach.
And in Thorn for Parenting, or maybe even part of
Mhm.
the Sextortion, do you caution parents themselves from oversharing? Like, um, it- to share so many private details of your family life,
Yeah.
does that make a child a more vulnerable target?
Yeah. So especially with the rise of deep fakes, and that's very scary as a parent to think about. But like, yeah, protecting your parents should practice what they preach in a way where it's like parents should have their profiles set on private. Parents shouldn't overshare. Don't share the names of, like, if your friend, don't publicly share where your kid goes to school and their age and all these things. I mean, you can share with your close friends, people you trust, but like think about who has access to that. And if they can get an image, then they can, create a new image with it. And that's a concern. So like just, doing what you can to take those steps as well is very important. Yeah.
And then there's a couple questions regard to peer to peer.
Yeah, I saw that and I'm really glad you brought that up because I had that thought right after I finished talking. You asked another question. So did you want to ask the
Sure.
question?
Yeah, I think it's just, is it handled differently? Is it, are the safeguards different? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really great question. Thank you to who brought that up in the chat. So that is, yeah, that is also a challenge. So there's peer-to-peer sextortion happens, which and that's something we really have to think about because it's, children abusing other children. And there's also this like spread right now of self-generated CSAM is what we call it. So it's like the spread of the naked selfies and nudes across schools. And it often starts where it's like two kids are dating in high school and then they break up and then it's like a revenge porn is what they call it, where they just like they break up and they're mad at each other. And so one person sends their nudes across the school and then the person who's I've seen cases where like the victim of the images like got in trouble and like got prosecuted for like production of child sexual abuse material of child pornography under the US law. And so it's like there's so many things that we need to do to fix that, to have a trauma-informed victim-centered approach. I mean, kids are kids and that's, they're going to make bad decisions. But when it comes to kids harming other children, we need to be very responsive. And I think that's where we can start with the schools and have, um, a very strategic approach in how we react to that in the schools. And then also, um, yeah, I think so. I'm not really answering the question because there's so many things to uncover here, but it's a really huge issue. It's something that shouldn't be ignored and it's something that we should take seriously. So you should report it the same way, I think. And that's where community response is really critical. And like the schools and like local law enforcement and like other parents, like talking to other parents, because it's like that's huge. And so we need to like really have, and also with prevention too, like we need to teach kids that they can't, like, that's not right to do this. Like, I think kids have phones and they hide, like, in the same way adults hide behind the screens and like post bad comments, hateful comments to each other because they can't see each other. Like, kids are sort of, desensitized almost with the phone. And like, we need to teach kids in middle school and earlier, much earlier, like I had mentioned, 3 years old is great for them to start. When they can start to like really know what technology is, you need to start talking about it. But it's the same foundations of like consent and talking about, body autonomy and talking about the same way you respond to other sexual violence issues, like we need to respond to this issue that way as well. So having a really holistic response and, with the schools and communities and social workers and all those people to really, respond in a way that's going to create behavior change, because that's what needs to happen. And that's what we're tracking in some of our research reports as well. But like one of the things too is like tracking that we've been tracking is like wanting to, stigmatize people who reshare, saying resharing is not cool, like making it, teaching kids how to respect each other, but also just like general digital safety, but bystander approach, like I talked about, like really blaming the sharer, the resharer, the person who's doing that versus the person in the photo, like, and helping them heal and recover. So there's so many steps, and I could have a whole webinar on just that topic alone, honestly. So I'm going to stop there.
Well, you're right. I mean, resharing, you're participating in a crime, I'm assuming, when you
Yeah.
reshare, right? It's a
Hmm.
so even that, kids understanding that they are now participating in a
Yes.
crime.
Yeah.
Um, so I loved in the story of Jaden exactly what you're talking about, this community engagement. Like you imagine a world where, you know, his sports team had, discussions on online safety and all these supportive areas and the
Mhm.
schools and pediatricians and all have been part of this community communication of, stopping this crime before it starts, right? Understanding guardrails and safety rails and rallying around kids who do fall victim. But how do you do that? How have you engaged those stakeholders specifically? And have you been able to, schools, practitioners, pediatricians, mental health professionals, how have you been able to successfully engage them in this process?
I mean, that's the work, like that's what we're still doing. That's why it's so wonderful to partner with organizations like yours to continue to like provide education and webinars and outreach. And we have our research that we hope that people take. I know tech companies take our research very seriously and read it. I think we have a lot of work to do when it comes to the education system in the US. I mean, we're working on launching, some of our partners in the space are working on launching some curriculum, and updating curriculum and like providing free curriculum, but also like, when it comes to reaching all of those audiences, like you can work with policymakers and but it really starts with like one person in an organization caring about it, listening on this webinar and taking it back and like doing the work to educate others and to get others on board with, responding to these types of issues of not just sextortion, but child sexual abuse in general. I mean, people don't like talking about it. People want to pretend like it's not happening. People want to think like it's not going to happen to their kid. It's not going to happen to, and so really, creating that foundational approach, it's going to require like a lot, a lot of work. And that's what we're here to do. Like, that's why I show up to work every day is, trying to create a better world. So, we're working on it, but if you'd like to partner in any way, like let me know. But I think yeah, it really takes a village. It takes the whole, it takes everyone to respond to this. And some of the work too is like even just educating parents to understand like, hey, this is your kid's experiencing shame and victim. I mean, you shouldn't shame and victim. You need to show up in a different way. And so like even educating parents in the way where it's like we don't blame, because that's, parents are teaching their kids and their kids are learning, and so there's just so many different areas that we need to move the needle on. So yeah.
So those resources specific to certain stakeholders, um,
Mhm.
are they available on Thorn or not quite yet? It's really more of a like a general package and maybe it
Yeah,
for
so
parents.
Thorn on our website, anyone can access our research and anyone can benefit from the research from any of those stakeholders. Our research hub is wonderful. Learning about the issue on our website is a really great place to start as well. And then, joining our email list, looking at blogs, we send different steps, different action things all the time. But then when it comes to the Thorn for Parents website, it's more targeted towards parents, but other trusted adults like educators could benefit from it. Our Stop Sextortion website has very specific steps for educators, policymakers, caregivers. And then with the other, like, I would love to partner with other groups to work on this. But I think, it's one of those things where our partners do a lot of work as well in the field. And so we really appreciate how much, they take our research and then go empower other groups to learn about this. So it is really like a multifaceted community approach to responding to the issue of child sexual abuse.
And I will be a testimony. One, your website is incredible, but two, just how collaborative Thorn is and how accessible everything, is in regards to not only just the site and the resources, but just in your willingness to partner and move the needle forward. And I would say, your incredible relationship with NCMEC, also shows that, you're not willing to work in a silo and just, say, this is our niche and this is what we're focused on. I mean, your broad approach to engaging every stakeholder is really powerful as an organization. So you guys have a lot to be proud of, a lot. So can you talk a tiny bit about No Filter?
Yeah.
That is a youth-driven program, right? Is it
Yeah.
online safety specific? What is that?
Yes, I'm happy to share. So No Filter was started around 2020, and it really focuses on, it's like a for youth by youth program. So what that means is it's focusing specifically on helping young people navigate their digital lives safely. And it covers, we have like a resource hub on the No Filter website. And it's spelled No Filter with like that in the chat. So, and they have really amazing, so they have, really great short clips on TikTok that help, again, focusing on like the bystander approach, destigmatizing the issue, really targeting youth to have conversations. And so that's how it started, was on TikTok. Well, many different places, but that's how it really started. And then we noticed a lot of kids really, really wanting to talk about these issues and learning a lot about this. And kids are wanting to talk to each other about it. They already know about it. And so then they developed a resource hub. We have a resource hub on online grooming. There's different quizzes. They partner with different companies and organizations and create really informative prevention campaigns, really going where kids are. So partnering with organizations or companies like Discord and Pinterest, and really working Meta, and like really working to create campaigns that youth are interested in. So it's not as it's like trying to be like the cool older sibling, like giving advice. It's not like, an adult being like, you can't do this. So it's like really kids helping each other. And then we also have a youth innovation council. So that's where like they do the most amazing work. They have like 20 youth across the United States who join this, and they are so inspiring. And I love hearing from them and talking to them, but they do really amazing work in like helping to develop those resources, helping to develop those campaigns, and even like working directly with some of our partners on, what do youth, want to see? What types of things do youth want platforms to be doing more of, or like educators to be doing, or like what is their experience? So it's a really great program, and it's a really wonderful resource. And yeah, it exists on social media, and they have their own website as well.
I know it really is, you've done a great job sharing resources where we can engage adult stakeholders, right, at every level. But there's something so powerful about youth speaking to youth on the platforms they know, in the language they know. Like I know when I got on No Filter, I was like, oh, I'm way too
I
old for this. Like you can tell it's just their space.
Yeah, the
And
youth
to
council is
protect each
very
other.
quick. Yeah. Yeah, the youth council is very quick to like tell us that we're speaking an old language. Like they're very young and hip, and it's great. Yeah.
But even, a great resource for our audience to know that to
Yes.
direct youth to become engaged
Yes.
in No Filter,
Mhm.
again, probably does more than us speaking to each other. And
It's true. Yeah.
so, Kelby, I know we have drilled you.
No, it's good. I
Already
love
with
these
it.
questions. This is wonderful. Yeah, this is
Well,
great.
and you've been amazing. It's such a great audience. I hope we got most of the questions answered. I apologize if we didn't. I tried to combine some who are along the same theme. So, um, but I want to ask you kind of for key takeaways. But I think that what has been incredibly telling for me, not only as someone in this sector, but as a parent, is that we assume the four walls of our home are protective.
Mhm.
But meanwhile, we do kids such a great disservice by handing them a device that gives the entire world access to them
Mhm.
and make them such vulnerable targets to situations they're not even remotely prepared
Yeah.
to anticipate or to respond to. Or so I hope this webinar for the audience has been incredibly empowering. I think you're doing such great work. I think that, again, as engaging stakeholders, what you have in your audience are the pediatricians, the community leaders, the NGOs, the policymakers, the mental health professionals, so the social workers. So there's so much here that I think everyone in these sectors in this sector and these disciplines can find great value and somehow be able to, again, spread the great work that you're doing. Um, so again, I just loved kind of a key takeaway. What's, anything you want to,
Yeah. Again, I think it's really just approaching with recognizing that this can happen to anyone, approaching with empathy and understanding, teaching parents, teaching your kids, being a safe, trusted adult for anyone in your life. I think that's also true is like if you don't have kids, some people are like, well, I'm not a parent. And it's like, yeah, but you can be a very valuable, trusted, safe adult for someone and, be comfortable and for someone to talk to. So, and really just, knowing that this is something that parents need to talk about and you can't like I think some parents, and I didn't mention this, I thought I was getting a question about it with like parental monitoring apps and parental controls. It's like those are important, but just knowing that those tools can only go so far. It cannot replace conversations and dialogue with your children. Like you need to know, you need to like talk to your kids, make sure they know that they can come to you no matter what. And really the biggest takeaway is like removing fear and shame and victim blaming and just being supportive and saying we will get through this together, we will navigate this together. I think that's critical. I mean, with sextortion and with other abuse, I mean, it's all kind of the response is generally the same, where it's like providing that support and helping kids through that crisis is really critical.
do
And
beautifully said.
sorry, if I can just add one more thing.
Sure.
Just how much of this issue requires a holistic response. And thank you all for all of the work that you do and showing up for your community and doing your part to help respond to this issue is huge.
Lovely. Thank you, Kelby, so much. Thank you to Thorne. Thank you for Nick Mick. Thank you and for the audience. You've been so incredibly engaged and it's just been beautiful to see. So again, I just want to say good morning, good night, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And thank you for embracing this topic. It's a tough one, and it's such the prevalence, emerging prevalence is really staggering. So thank you for getting out in front of it. Thanks for everyone's willingness to openly talk about it and for you to share. So
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. And thanks for taking the time.
take care, everyone. Thank you, Kelby.
Thank you.